Hello and welcome to episode 37 of Generation GC Standing Ovation from Cardiology with Marc Juliano of the band Goalkeeper. My name is Molly Hudelson and I'm your host. Last week we talked about The River from Good Morning Revival, and in a few days we'll have a bonus episode, and next Wednesday we'll be back with an episode on a song from Youth Authority. Hello to everyone listening from Philadelphia. I just moved here a few days ago. I'm still settling in, but so far so good. I've got a really great place in an awesome neighborhood, and I'm just really excited to explore. I know I haven't been super all over the socials as maybe I usually had been, but hopefully I'll get back in the rhythm, but obviously was not super glued to my phone or the internet for a little bit there. I connected with Goalkeeper back in the summer of 2018 when I did a premiere for them on Substream, and I'm really excited to have Marc on the show today. If you're not familiar with Goalkeeper, I'll read their bio for you. When opportunity knocks, Philly natives Goalkeeper are the ones answering the door. Ryan Beebe, singer-bassist, Marc Juliano, guitarist, and Cody Ritchie, drummer, came together at a critical point to create the perfect storm of melodic hooks and hard-hitting pure pop punk. Finding inspiration in the expanding genre, Goalkeeper wants to prove there's still new sounds to be heard and focuses on tight, driving songwriting. Their music emphasizes a refined, fervent sound influenced by early pop-punk frontrunners with lyrics that are fixated on introspective growth. Goalkeeper has supported bands such as State Champs, The Starting Line, Hit the Lights, Real Friends, Can't Swim with Confidence, and more. As I have been for the past several months, I wanted to remind you all to please continue visiting antisemitism.card.co and blacklivesmatters.card.co to learn about anti-Semitism and the Black Lives Matter movement, respectively. It's important to continue educating ourselves, and I don't mean to say anti-Semitism and the fight against anti-Semitism and Black Lives Matter are the same. They're not. But they're both important forms of injustice that I think a lot of people, myself included, honestly, should really continue to make an effort to research, be aware of, and continue to educate ourselves. Finally, Generation GC stickers are here. Do you want a sticker? Two things you can do. Number one, go to anchor.fm/GenerationGCPod and support the show. Click support there, and that helps me keep the show going. It helps me get microphones, headphones, cords, supplies, all the little things you kind of need, as well as get the stickers printed and mail them to you guys. Or number two, you can make a charitable donation to any org listed at blacklivesmatters.card.co. There's a lot of great organizations listed there, and any charitable organization will work any amount. And just send me a screenshot of either your support of the show on Anchor or your charitable donation and your mailing address. And then I will send you stickers. And that's about all for the intro. Thank you so much for tuning in, and now on to the episode.
So, Standing Ovation is track 9 on Cardiology, Good Charlotte's 5th album, which turns 10 years old. By the time people are listening to this, it will be 10 years old. Track 8 is Alive. Track 10 is Harlow's song, Can't Dream Without You. And this is a deep cut. Not a single. I don't think they've ever played it live. I searched a little bit, but I didn't see any records. Written by Benji and Joel, along with John Feldman, who they had previously worked with on The Young and the Hopeless. And kind of side note, but like, you know, as part of this, we'll get into some of the fan discourse and fan comments. And I tried to look on iTunes because that's, at least once upon a time, that was a thing people would like review albums on iTunes.
Right.
I don't think this album is on iTunes. I did not see it.
Really?
Yeah. So the reason that I am guessing, and I do not know if this is true, so anyone listening, please do not take this as fact, but this was their only release on Capitol Records, so it could possibly have something to do with that. I don't know like the specifics of that distribution deal, but that could be my only guess, because their other stuff is all on iTunes, and this is on Spotify. But yeah, I don't know.
That's weird though. That's like a problem like a local band has when their music isn't uploaded to like the right profile on Apple Music or something.
Right. Well, like, you being, South Jersey and Philly band, Major League on Spotify, like some of their releases are on different like Spotify profiles.
Oh, it is. That's right.
Also named Major League. So yeah. I thought of Brian as I was looking at places in Philly, and I was like, oh, this one's in Rittenhouse. Major League has that song.
Such a good song. Such a good part of town too.
It is such a it's an expensive part of town.
Yes, for sure.
It'd be like for what I go. It'd be like, okay, here's like an okay kind of small apartment, but like also you're gonna pay $250 a month for parking.
Yeah, minimum.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not gonna live in Rittenhouse. Mm-hmm. But let's before we dive into this song in particular, Standing Ovation by Good Charlotte, by the way, not Rittenhouse by Major League. Mark, I want to help our listeners get to know you.
Yeah.
So the first question that I always like to ask is, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what were your first thoughts on them?
So when I was like thinking about it, I would have to say, probably like my 8th grade year.
Okay.
Freshman year in high school. So I guess I was like 14, 15, and I loved it because the first song I heard was the anthem. Whatever.
The anthem, yeah.
The anthem, yeah. Great start to a Good Charlotte podcast. Pardon me. But so first one I thought was like was the anthem, and immediately just loved like the bounciness of it. And I actually heard them around the same time I heard like Bowling for Soup.
Yeah. And
who was the other band? Yellow Card. So those are in Simple Plan. So like kind of like those 4 bands I found all at the same time. And their record, Young and Hopeless, was like one of the first ones I like tried to learn a lot of the guitar parts for, just because I loved how like big it sounded. And I always thought that the drums sounded really unique, especially the bass drum, compared to like a lot of the other records. Like you didn't hear a Blink-182 bass drum sound like that.
No. And Blink also has, Travis also did a lot of cool things on drums, but nothing that sounded, I think, like the stuff Josh Freese did on The Young and the Hopeless.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the closest drum sound I think I've heard to that would be like Taking Back Sunday on some of like their songs. Yeah. I think that was kind of like kind of the cool thing to do at that time, as far as like the engineering goes for records. And yeah, I loved it. And from then, like every time I would like every record from then on out, I would say has always been like, yeah, I can listen to this. It won't be like my number one. I'm blasting it every time.
Sure.
But it's one of those, man, I've been listening to like a lot of the same bands recently. Who can I mix it up with? Good Charlotte, of course. And I feel like I've kind of got back into them recently because like working on our new record with Kevin and Will, and seeing our friends in Keep Flying, who were supposed to open for them a little bit ago. And then, of course, the Warp 25th like anniversary. And now the Madden brothers have like their own management company. So they're picking up some of the bands like Water Parks. I feel like they've come back into like me actively listening to them.
I feel like, I mean, this is not a scientific observation, but I feel like that is kind of common for a lot of people, that you have a lot of people that maybe had gotten into Good Charlotte, around the age you did, middle school, high school, and just, discovered other things over the years. And then they're seeing everything the Maddens are doing now. And it's like, kind of like piquing that interest again.
Yeah. And they're one of the only bands. What I really liked about them is, aside from like Blink-182 and like the powerhouses, they were one of the few bands in our genre of music who really hit the mainstream.
Yeah.
They may not be selling out. Like they might, like if they come to Philly, they might only play the TLA, which is still no.
But they would sell out the TLA.
Instantly. Yeah. They could do 2 nights there. I think they've done that.
I saw them, the last time I saw them in Philly was Fillmore. And I think it sold out, but I'm not positive.
Probably. I mean, because they're one of those bands. It's like, yeah, you got to go see them because you might not know when you're going to see them again. But
exactly.
I like how they broke it. They still like broke into the mainstream. And one of the, I think that not only with their music, but with their like personalities and their aesthetic too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they really pioneered for pop punk, like the spiky hair, the piercings, the
right. Because like Blink was not. Well, what was Blink wearing? Like big T-shirts and like baggy shorts and Vans, you know, and what was Billy Joe? I mean, this is pre-American Idiot when the first couple of Good Charlotte records came out. So what was Billy Joe Armstrong wearing? You know,
T-shirt and ripped jeans and Converse.
Right.
But yeah, they really made it like they also made pop punk like a fashion trend too, which I know is kind of like split between for some people. Some people think it ruined it. Some people think it really brought it out to the mainstream. I think it brought it out to the mainstream.
I think it brought it out to the mainstream, and it made people feel like it was more of a thing. Like it's not just a type of music. It's like, oh, this is. I feel like calling it a lifestyle is a little much, but this is a community. You know, this is a way of self-expression, and bringing it out with like the fashion and stuff, like really just brought that all together.
Right. And people want to be part of something.
Yeah.
You know, so, and there's a lot of bands where, you know, you can kind of just like I said, Blink and Green Day, they were just so normal for the most part, aside from maybe like Travis with his tattoos and everything. But, you know, Good Charlotte kind of pioneered. It's like, okay, well, you know, Green Day is the voice of the underground punk kids, you know, from Bay Area, California, with like really broken homes and probably not a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
Blink became the voice for the people who were like middle class, upper middle class, and we're showing like, hey, we still have like stuff to talk about too, and feelings and everything.
Yeah.
And Good Charlotte's like, well, how do we capitalize on that one? It's like, well, let's just be so out there, you know, because when I first saw their picture, I was like, that's they don't sing this song. That looks like some Marilyn Manson stuff.
I had known like lifestyles. I think I want to say was the first thing I heard, and I had heard the word Good Charlotte, and I think I first pictured that as a girl named Charlotte, and like it was this girl, Good Charlotte.
Right.
Because I just like before seeing any image of them ever.
Which would kind of make sense because in this like artistic way, you imagine this girl who's been called like Good Charlotte, Good Charlotte, Good Charlotte, and she gets so angry she just completely rebels, and that's exactly
she's like an Avril 2.0, whatever.
And the guys in Good Charlotte dress and act exactly how that Good Charlotte character would be.
Exactly.
But I think, but like I said, they just brought it, like, I feel like they just really brought it to like a mainstream. And back for me, back then, I didn't really know what pop punk was. I just thought it was rock music.
Yeah.
And so for me and my family was very much like whatever was on the radio. So I didn't really know about the underground pop punk scene until senior year of like high school. I just thought every band was like massive. Like if you're,
I relate to that a lot. Yeah.
So like the fact that I found them meant that they were really out there compared to other bands, because other bands were around at that time. And I had no idea who they were for 6 or 7 years later, but I knew them.
Yeah. So talking about the underground, I mean, Goalkeeper, I think, is definitely an amazing area of the country for underground music. Philly / South Jersey has so much going on. Obviously, we mentioned Major League already, but, Man Overboard, The Wonder Years, et cetera, et cetera. There's many. Who are some of your favorite local acts currently?
So Friend Circle are definitely.
Yeah, I've seen you tweet about them.
Yes, they are some of our best friends. I was actually just hanging out with their guitarist Dom the last couple of days. And Midfield, they rule, really hard hitting. I feel like they really pioneer that Philadelphia pop punk, similar to like Wonder Years and Major League and things. Just very, 1-2 punch every time you hear it. And then Crashing, I love them. They're more of a punk band than like pop punk. They're more relative to like Menzingers and whatnot.
Okay.
Connor, their bassist and singer, his favorite band's like Gaslight Anthem. So kind of like that. They're very much like, I always say they'd be better in Asbury Park with Bouncing Souls and stuff like that. But and then who else? It's been, I feel so bad because like since it's been so long with the pandemic, you kind of forget
it's like you're not seeing people every weekend at shows.
Right. And unless a band's releasing music, you really don't see them online. So it's like easy to be like, oh crap, right, you exist as a band. I am so sorry.
Yeah.
I always thought Merit was real. We love Merit. We did we did a bunch of shows with them in the past. They're always a lot of fun. And yeah, Dave Earl. David Earl. His acoustic stuff at every show is incredible.
There's definitely a lot going on in Philly.
There is, yeah.
Philly, every time I talk to someone from Philly on this show, I have to mention that Philly was the first city that played Good Charlotte on the radio. So
that's true.
Lots of history there. But obviously, this is a question for the past times because, this is not a thing anyone's doing right now, hopefully. But how do you find a balance between, wanting to be, active or be like a part of the community and the kind of the local scene while also trying to, build the band and get out and travel a bit?
So one of the things is you can never really forget like where you're from. Like just because you start doing some DIY tours doesn't mean that you're too big for your local scene.
Yeah.
And so we try to play as many local shows as we still can, but obviously we don't want to oversaturate the market because we've been very fortunate that we've been added to some of the bigger shows. So obviously we can't play as many of the smaller, like just shows.
Right. Cause they'll do like radius clauses, right?
Yeah, but then
or
also,
like dates, like you can't play another show in Philly within however many days or something.
Yeah, it's like we've been hit with those a few times, but it's also because people just will hey, I want to come see you play a show, but you have a show at Creep Records on a Saturday night for $10 and you play later, or I could come see you open up for this band at the Foundry for $20, and I have to be there by 6:30 on a Friday. Like, where am I going to go? And unfortunately, if we have more people driving to like the Creep show than like the bigger Foundry show, well, then we lose those opportunities in the future.
Right.
So, so it's really just like a lot of planning. And what's really nice is every time we go out on like even like a DIY run or something, we come back and we always try to play like a basement show if we can.
Like a little homecoming.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah,
a little bit, and just especially we try to put a lot of bands on we haven't played with in a while. Like back in January, we did a show with Midfield and Moment to Capitalize, and two bands we haven't played with at that point for almost like a year, right?
Oh wow!
But the biggest thing that we do is knowing that we can't always play as many of those shows just because we have like touring, or we have, like I said, we have a bigger show coming up that we can't split like the fan base with, especially because but we go to as many of the shows as possibly can.
Yeah,
I've been to 5 or 6 local shows in a week, before.
I feel like it's helpful to just, like, from my experiences, spent a lot of years like interviewing bands and writing premieres for bands on Substream. And
thank you for that, by the way.
Yes, welcome. No, and photographing shows and stuff. Just like, even if I didn't have like a job at a show, it was good to like just know who people were and like interact with people and be like, oh, like I've tweeted about your band 3 times. Let me like actually go watch your set and then shake your hand after you play. Like,
exactly. And that's what we try to do all the time. It's like we're doing things the way we think we need to grow the band and to get those better opportunities and those bigger opportunities. Because ultimately our goal is to become a professional band.
Totally. Yeah.
And so if we can't play a show with all of our friends, we try to go to as many of their shows as possible, buy their merchandise, because they do the same thing for us too.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it a community, is
like a mutual thing.
Exactly. And it's not even just to go because, oh, I just want to do my good deed. It's like, no, I genuinely want to go to this anyway, because what am I going to do? Sit and watch House of Cards?
Right.
I'd rather go hang out with my friends, and especially now with not being able to.
Yeah. So Goalkeeper recently released the Life in Slow Motion EP. And I think that was the second or third EP?
You can so it's like the second full, like when we actually just straight released an EP, but the first few singles we did as a band, we released them as singles, and then we just put them all on an EP on Spotify just as like a collective. So depending on who you ask in the band, it's the third. I say it's the second.
Okay, so we'll go with the second because I'm asking you. How have you been influenced, like both you as in you personally as well as like the band as a whole? How have you been influenced by Good Charlotte's music?
Definitely the lyrics.
Yeah,
just like the catchiness, the infect, because that's the one thing we learned when we were writing our last EP, Bad Times Don't Last, was if the listener cannot at least hum the melody of your chorus after the first listen, it's not catchy enough.
Right.
And it doesn't mean the lyrics have to be cheesy or anything like that. It just has to be so memorable and relatable, either in the melody alone or melody and lyrics, that you just can't get it out of your head. And I feel like that's something that Good Charlotte does very, very well with almost every song they put out.
Yeah.
It's just an instant. The second you, like, even if you haven't listened to a song by them in months, you listen to any one of their songs,
like you remember it.
Exactly. And it's going to be stuck in your head for the rest of the day. It might make you mad because you can't get it out of your head. But so that would definitely be the main thing we were influenced by.
Yeah.
And for me, the guitar work, I do like a lot of their kind of like the bounciness that they do, like how they kind of jump around different chords.
Yeah.
And like the what was the Life Changes, like how they have like that really like kind of lo-fi cleaner distorted like octave chord in the beginning, and then it goes into this heavy breakdown for like the second half of that line. Like I love doing stuff like that. I love that low to super high energy in verses. And
a lot of that, like it's kind of those little, what seem like almost little touches that can take a song. I mean, at least, this is my experience as someone who is not at all an audio professional or knows anything about like recording, but I feel like it's things like that that make a song sound quote unquote professional often. It
is, yeah. And one of the things we've been taught too, and what we've learned is with pop music, the reason we think it's so obviously popular is because it gives people the idea like I could do this too.
Yeah.
And you listen to a Good Charlotte song, not that you can just rip off, Young and the Hopeless record and just, oh, it's easy, because it's not. But it gives you the idea, especially when you're learning guitar, like, wow, I can do this little run, I can do this little chord progression. But then you learn the appreciation for their music, because you find out that even though it's super simple, it's very hard to be different from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And I think they do that really, really well, especially in like a genre of music that can get repetitive with a lot of things. Like they just find, how can we make this verse that might be the same type of progression or rhythm that we've used before, maybe like another song uses, but how can we change it up enough where it sounds completely different and new?
Yeah.
And that's something I really value from Good Charlotte, and I try to, learn when I'm doing like guitar work for our band.
I mean, I'm so glad that, I was able to have you on this podcast. So let's dive into the song. I mean, we had talked on Twitter about this. You sent me some songs, but why did you want to talk about Standing Ovation in particular?
Because so one of the things about Goalkeeper is we are heavily influenced by other genres than pop punk.
Yeah.
I love the blues and rockabilly and just kind of like straight rock and roll. Cody loves pop music. Ryan loves country. He's a huge country guy. So when I heard this, when I was listening to this record and I was listening to this song, just that guitar riff in the intro is very rockabilly and bluesy, and it's just not something you'd imagine a pop punk band would play.
Yeah.
And I'm not so much big with lyrics. That's just never been my, like, I listen to them and I can sing them, but I've never been one to really break them down. But I always go by how the music feels. And songs like this, especially Standing Ovation, I just imagine on like a big stage with all the lights, and it's just really emotional and just energetic with how like a music video could go or something. Just very, you see people like holding up their arms and screaming the lyrics, and just like, and again, just like that guitar riff in the beginning, it's so melodic.
Yeah. If it wasn't, a pandemic, I would be like clamoring for a 10th anniversary show, play this album in full, get to have that moment live.
Yes, absolutely. Which I think they've never played live, have they?
No. I mean, maybe at some place that was not recorded ever, but not that I saw. I check setlist.fm, and then I'll also search on YouTube too, like to see if I can maybe find like a live video. Someone today we had an episode on There She Goes that went up today, and like the song itself has never been live, but like someone tweeted at me a video where they like sang part of the chorus live. At like one show. So I was like, maybe something like that has happened with this song. Who knows? Right. But this is also kind of like a more ballady type song that I'm like, okay, I would get why you might not bust this out live.
Well, especially when they do have other ballady type songs too that are probably a little bit more memorable.
Right.
Or not even memorable, but like fan favorites.
Yeah.
Like what's their...
I mean, Hold On would be like the big one.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, that would be the big ballad for sure.
Yeah. But like I said, I just love I just felt like you could just, if you were playing this live, and as a guitar player, like I said, I'm more influenced by the music and how the song flows.
Yeah.
Because I don't like things to be too complicated, which you can hear in Goalkeeper songs.
Yeah.
But
like it's an art to make something that is not complicated, right? Like to make something that's good. Like good does not have to be complicated, and making something that's simple is an art. Like it's a skill.
Right. I always say to myself when I listen to something simple, it's like, wow, I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Right.
That's so spot on.
But like you didn't think of it, which is like why it's so good. Exactly.
Whereas you hear a lot of like really complex pop punk songs, you're like, I could have never written that in a million years, and you kind of get turned off by it because it's like, that's not me. But it's like you hear something you could have done, it's like, oh man, like how did I not think of ever doing something like that? And that's kind of like this lead I love. And being a guitar player, I love like the lean back. You're up on stage, you're kind of leaning back and you just kind of dig it into it, flowing with that drum, like that da, 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 and then you're just kind of like rolling with it.
Yeah.
It's very I feel like that's a very like guitar player part.
Yeah.
And that's what instantly grabbed me from the start of the song. I was like, yeah. And then of course like the big anthemic choruses, and one thing Good Charlotte does in this song, and I think they do in a lot of other songs that I like, is they know how to like turn major chords in like whatever key they're playing into minors in the most appropriate places.
What do you mean? Like, explain this for someone who has like does not really know music theory.
So, in every song you pick a key, so D major, E major, whatever, and then in that key there are 8 chords, and they're identified as either major or minor, just depending on the key.
Right.
So like C major has C major, G major, A minor, and F major, the most basic common chord progression in the world. So what you can do sometimes to kind of give a song a very emotional feel, or just like a dark feel or a different feel, is you can take one of those major chords and just make it a minor.
So like playing a C minor.
Right. Or what's very common is taking, like in a C major, you might take the F major chord, and if you're transitioning to a different part of the song, like a bridge, you might make that F major into an F minor, and it gives this very like spooky, unresolved feeling.
Okay.
And
as you're describing it, I'm like, okay, I know where I can like hear this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, do you listen to this Wildlife?
A little bit.
Do you remember the song Puppy Love?
Vaguely. Like, I know I've seen them live a few times. I don't know if I could pick out the songs.
Okay. They do it in their choruses to kind of transition to like, because one of the things about simple songs too is when you play the most basic progression is it can sound like after every part the song sounds like it could resolve, like it's done. Like, why am I listening further? So sometimes a good trick for a musician to do, for any musicians listening out there, is when you're transitioning to a different part of a song, change something in that last chord or the lead or so whatever to make it feel like the listener has to continue listening because psychologically they can't stop right there because it feels too awkward to stop.
Do you know the band Social Animals?
Yes. So,
do you know their newest song, Something to Keep Me Awake?
I've heard it, but like I'd have to listen to it again to familiarize myself.
So I'm just thinking of it because in the final verse, Dietrich says some things get boring enough by the final verse. And I was like, oh, you're just like calling out yourself and like, so many other bands out there.
Well, it's true. That's why most of the time, like, people won't listen past the first chorus or like the second chorus because it's just repetitive. So Good Charlotte does a really good job, especially in their bridges, of doing really unique things like that, especially in this song. And then not only do they change it with the chords, but they do a really good job with their vocals and matching that mood. Yeah. So they'll bring down like, the vocal, they'll make the vocal eerie and spooky with that minor chord or that sad sounding chord. Where like you need to listen to that last chorus
to like resolve that little bit of tension. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and again, a very simple concept that a lot of pop punk bands and rock bands in general use, but it's so hard to be creative like that without just ripping it off. And they do like a good job where it's like, I've never heard that in another song. I've heard the concept, but I haven't heard that.
You haven't heard that execution of the concept.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I think that's like what also stuck out to the song because it had that ballady, melodic lead, uplifting vocals, and then just sprinkling in a lot of those cool little musical theory techniques to make the song just because it's a 4-minute song.
Yeah.
And the average pop punk song should only be between
2.5 minutes, like
2.5, 3:15 at best. Like
what is damn it? I think that's like just over 2 minutes or something.
I think it's like 2:30, 2:25. That's the same thing with like What's My Age Again. Most of all the new Goalkeeper songs are under 3 minutes, with the exception of like 3.
Yeah.
So the fact that they can make a 4-minute song not feel like a 4-minute song, brilliant. But they're also brilliant songwriters. People don't give them enough credit.
Well, I know you said that you're not even necessarily going after the lyrics, but let's talk about the lyrics of this. I want to hear, I want to hear what you think this song is about.
So when I was like reading the lyrics, like, and just trying to, like you said, just kind of get familiarized with them so I can see them. One of the things that I saw was, maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like this is like an ode to the local band, right? Like they're like they come back home and like nothing's changed, right? Like the streets are still crowded. Just because you're back doesn't mean that all of a sudden like, oh my God, you're back. And people still like come and go, and they kind of come and go in your life because you start to travel and be in a band.
Oh, so the lines about like the days I watch you grow is like kind of watching a band like kind of blossom.
Right. And then you could even take it further and make it a little bit more generalized with just a person who makes it out of it. Because like, I mean, from my understanding with their history, if I'm correct, is they didn't come from the best upbringing either. And
definitely not.
Is it? So you're obviously you can educate me on this.
Yeah.
I heard that they told themselves, the Madden brothers, that they needed to make it so they could support the family and like their mom. Is that true?
I believe that. I mean, I don't know if I've heard like that exact statement, but that's definitely very in line with, a lot of their beliefs. I know that, when they got like a big advance check, You know, one of the first things they did was apparently they, you know, they bought their mom a house. You know, they definitely did not come from a great upbringing with their father. You know, definitely did not come from a lot of money.
Right. So like that's, I feel, is also kind of maybe
like letter to self.
Letter to self, or just letters to anybody who has done that, have gotten themselves out of like their situation and gone on to bigger and better things.
Like a hey, I'm proud of you.
Exactly, yeah. And when they come back, like a little bit of with the lyrics of like, you know, like through the crowd streets, like people still come, like people come and go. Like let's just take our time, make the most of every day we have. Like you know, get out, and then while you still have the chance, and do it, and then appreciate it, and then even if you come back, still appreciate what you've accomplished.
Not to call this, because I will say, and I'll share what my interpretation of the song in a second, which is a little different. Not to call this a swan song, because that almost feels like it's over dramatizing it. But, you know, this was the last album they put out before hiatus. And I kind of wonder, like, based on like your interpretation of this song, I almost wonder if this was sort of a like, hey, we're gonna peace out.
It could be.
I mean,
it could be, and I think like, or maybe they're gonna come back home, and you know they're gonna be home for a while. But like at the very last part of the song, as I start to make my way back home, I can't help but crack a smile, because I know the standing ovations for you, like everyone in their hometowns, like rallying behind them, because like, hey, you went out and you made something of yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that speaks, you know, that relates really well to a lot of bands who are in like the local scene trying to make it, not necessarily because they might hate their hometown, but because they want opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's one of the reasons I love where I live. Like I love my friends.
Oh my gosh. But, you know, there are much worse places you could be to be a pop punk band than like, you know, the Philadelphia area. Yeah.
Right.
But even like the Wonder Years, who love Philadelphia, they still, you know, it was big for them to get out and tour.
Right. And I think too, just knowing that this potential career can connect you to so many people all around the world. Like I'm still like, my wife helps me pack up the merch every time we do like merch orders, and me and her both still kind of smile, not kind of, we like smile when we get an order from someone in Australia.
That's so cool.
Or Europe, you know, things like that.
So cool.
And like every time I see our Spotify stats and I see we have listeners in like Middle East, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like,
it's always cool, because you'll see like, I'll look at like the listener stats for this show, and it'll be like 75% US, but you have to like scroll all the way to the bottom to see like what are the countries with like 1%.
Yep.
Because then you're like, oh, well, this is someone who found this not because everyone around them also knew this thing. They found it in some way of their own accord.
Right. And we just like, for us and Goalkeeper, we want to get out, we want to connect with those people. I want to see the world. Like this is one of the only jobs that you get to travel the world, but not in like a business meeting sense. Like you got to go and meet with some big CEO in some whatever, Japan or Australia, Thailand, all those countries. Like you get to go and have fun. Like
and you get to make that human connection too.
Right. And just see the world. And especially with music, like music's universal. So, you know, you could get everybody who likes Goalkeeper in the entire world and put them in the same room, and they'll all get along because they're watching a Goalkeeper show, and they all have that in common, you know?
Yeah.
So I think just like being able to like, and especially with being in a band, it's so hard. And one of the things that we're starting to experience, like my in-laws see this when they see we're shipping merchandise out to different countries, or we're getting these like, you know, bigger show offers. It's like, oh, now I see, now I get it, because now you're starting to scratch a little bit of that the surface.
Yeah.
And the fact it's like being able to make it with music or any entertainment, because it's so hard. You know, there's something to, like, I think growing up, anytime you talk to someone like, oh, I'm a professional musician, you're like, today I'm 29. I'm in a band, and I'm still like, you make money.
Tell me how.
You have a career. You get to travel the world. What is this like?
Like you actually pay your bills with this?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you still have to pay taxes? Damn.
You're not like in debt because of this. You make money. What?
Right. So I think, and like being able to like, come back home from like doing that and having like everyone's super super stoked for you and excited and giving you like that metaphorical standing ovation. So, and I think this also says a lot about them. Like, don't ever forget where you came from, because so many people leave and they never look back. And then their hometown, who's like, hey, we supported you, but you act like we never existed. Right. So like they're coming back, and like the fact that people appreciate them, this character, it's like, hey, you never forgot where you came from, and that speaks highly about your character.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely had a pretty different interpretation of this song.
That's the best thing about music.
Yes, and that's what's so cool about all this. To me, like the moments where this song has resonated with me the most are like when I, kind of come out of like being really depressed or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm actually like really happy to be alive and just like super glad to be here. And I feel like this song is kind of that feeling, like, just make the most of every day, like really wanting to revel in like even the small moments. With the line, to me, like I see the line, the days I watch you grow. To me, that feels like it's about his kids. Like he is just so happy to have, these beautiful children, so proud of them, so just happy to be a father and have this wonderful family. Yep. That's what I got out of that. And I think, and again, this is just like my interpretation, I don't know them, right? They've written a lot about their kind of painful family experiences growing up. And so I can imagine that like in comparison to then be able to like build a family of your own is just like incredible. Like, like so reward. I feel like rewarding is not even the word. But
I think it's a good word.
Yeah. So it feels good. This song, and this Goalkeeper does this too, and Good Charlotte does this too, and a lot of bands tend to write about sadness and being hurt and like or being angry. That's kind of people often default to writing about those things. Like some people say it's easier. But this song, I get a read of this song that is very, very positive. And it's not like, the early records, which would be kind of like, okay, like, yeah, one day, like, we're really poor now, but one day we're going to be self-made millionaires. This is just in the moment. Like, this is in the moment. I feel nothing but happiness and, like, gratitude. That's the word for this song, gratitude.
Yep. Yeah, that's like, I got the same idea. Like, it was a very positive song, but I think the mood of the music, too, relates to that. It doesn't sound like it would be a sad song. It sounds like it'd be very, like even like the music video, I could imagine, unless they have one, I didn't see it, but could be a bunch of like smiling faces and just oozing with positivity. Yeah. But and honestly, like I said, I think this song, that's the best thing about music is, a well-written song can mean 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people. And
that's exactly what we talked about on the episode that went up today on There She Goes, that, there's like, I had an interpretation of it that my guest had a similar interpretation, but like we went into some fan discourse and fans were saying completely different things. And I was like, oh. Well, let's read what Benji Madden told Alternative Press in a track-by-track of the album.
Oh, yes.
He said, Joel and I wrote this one about his son and daughter and our niece. Having families and kids has given our lives new perspectives. This one feels like a more grown-up song that could not have been on our self-titled album. True. I learned to play guitar by listening to Oasis records, and this is straight out of the Noel Gallagher handbook. Yeah.
There you go.
I like had that in my head as I was listening to the album today, and I was like, okay, yeah, this does like feel like a Good Charlotte version of an Oasis kind of piano ballad.
Right, and that would make sense because all the guitar theory I mentioned a while ago would relate to why they did that in this song, because they do a lot of those switching chords around and very emotional. Like it doesn't, you don't need to have crazy rhythms. It's just a da 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 da, and it's just like that with the right chords and the right versing's of the chords.
Yeah,
all the emotion you need.
I was thinking about today, like I love Oasis. I mean, I haven't listened to Oasis in a while, but like, you know, some Oasis songs are kind of nonsense, right? Yeah. Like they say something, and this is not meant as a criticism of Oasis, but like if you were to sit down and read the lyrics of Champagne Supernova, like
they were very high when they wrote that.
Right. Like, what is that, right? what are you writing about, you know? I mean, is this just like stoner nonsense, you know? But like, it's so genius when you listen to it, and it just has this flow that you're like, oh yeah, I'm just like vibing.
Yeah, which makes it the perfect stoner song because you just lay in the field and you just They're the modern day Pink Floyd without all the ambient noise.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Are you an Oasis fan?
Yeah, definitely. It's more of the appreciation for them, I would say, more than like jamming them out in the car. But they're definitely the band I watch, like when I'm watching like live shows on YouTube and things like that, just because they can just make they're so like such a simplistic song, just massive. Yeah. And again, you know, one thing that we were doing with like Goalkeepers, like when we were doing this record, is Will and Kevin really kind of showed us like different bands like Coldplay, something that we'd be very close-minded to, be like, yeah, like whatever, they're kind of lame.
No, radio rock, yeah.
And then you see their documentary and you see how they came up and
like all that goes into each and every song.
Exactly. And you start to see like, wow. And the reason songs like Wonderwall, yeah, you might be annoyed by it, but let's get real. You're only annoyed by it because you didn't write it.
Right. You're like, this is so simple. Maybe you're going to be the one that saves me. Like, that's so freaking simple.
Right. It's why it's the anthem of the UK. But United Kingdom national anthem. But yeah, just like they're doing exactly what we want to do. They're taking a very relatable concept with very a simple way of saying it. Not even simple like dumbed down, but simple and
like direct, cutting out the bullshit.
And elegant, right?
Yeah.
Like very, very
eloquent.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
I feel like that aspect of like, you know, because I think while there are some pop punk bands that are more complex, you know, so to speak, I feel like where pop punk is more likely to falter is having very simple songs and not having those moments that are like a little intricate or whatever that make it like an Oasis or a Good Charlotte.
It's safe. That's how we say it. It's like, oh, that's a safe song because verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Yeah. And there's nothing special about anything. You just played the same four chords. It of course it's catchy and it's awesome, but you know, but maybe being a little bit egocentric with egotistical with this, but it's like you did that and you didn't take any risks because you knew it was like a safe, you're like, oh, if we do this, people are going to like it because it's relatable. But where bands like Good Charlotte and Simple Plan, Blank, Green Day, Oasis, Foo Fighters, all these legends in the music industry, is they take those simple songs, but they know how to take those risks within the songs that you might not feel comfortable doing because you're so afraid, but it's like, well, here's how you can do it well, and here's how you can say this in a very strong way, yet simple, and it might feel uncomfortable when you're writing it because you don't know if it's gonna like fit, but it does, and that's like I think what catches so many people's attention. Like if you look at the chords for Wonderwall, they're not that simple.
Yeah, Wonderwall was one of the first songs I learned on guitar. And I remember feeling like, you know, thinking about like and I say this as like my guitar playing level never went very far past Wonderwall, right? And it was like, I didn't necessarily understand the theory. Like the placement of like my fingers and how I was going to like shape the chords felt like pretty straightforward. And I wasn't like noodling all over the fretboard. But like then actually looking at like a tab of Wonderwall, be like, what is this?
Right. And that's the genius of it.
Yeah. What is a Wonderwall? What's a Wonderwall? I'm gonna have to put Wonderwall on the playlist.
There you go. Tangent episode Oasis.
Right. Mark, do you have any like specific memories or stories that you want to share about Standing Ovation?
I remember listening to it when my very first band were getting ready to play our like very first show.
Oh my gosh.
So, because just listening through like all of just being, that's actually the time too where I didn't listen to anything other than pop punk, and like the songs were very much obvious of that because there weren't anything that's like creative. You
can tell, I feel like, when a pop punk band listens to nothing but pop punk, and like when their members have more diverse kind of influences.
Right, exactly. And so I was always like trying to write and like what can I do, and then I was like listening to Good Charlotte because for that same reason. And I remember hearing that song and then just like laying in my dorm room because I was in college and we were going to play our first show on the college campus like the next night. And I probably listened to that song like 10 times that night.
Oh wow.
Just because of like, again, the flow of everything. Yeah. And I'm very much of a feeling person when it comes to the music of it. So like closing my eyes, just imagining like the big stage with all these people and like the big ballad and stuff like that. And like the emotion that runs through everybody. It's just like that song kind of like brought me there. And that's like a goal of mine to have that moment in any band. So I would say that's probably like the biggest memory, like with that song in particular.
I love that. What a great memory and story to have. Before we dive into some critic discourse, real quick, I like to mention if there's any other songs in Good Charlotte's discography we can kind of tie it to. I think the obvious ones with this, knowing that it was written about their kids, would be Harlow's song Can't Dream Without You, also on this album, and California, The Way I Say I Love You on Generation RX.
I was actually going to say California too, because I just got done listening to that record a few times, and I was like, that relates.
yes. Also about his kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the critic discourse, and there was not much, you know. There was a decent amount of reviews on this album, but not too many that mentioned this song.
Right. Well, this wasn't a single, right?
Right. It wasn't a single. So, and it was like kind of a little later in the album. So yeah, like, you know, look, I've reviewed a lot of albums too. So like, I know which ones are like just not going to get picked up on, right? Like which songs. Right. So it doesn't surprise me. The Harvard Crimson said that it was introspective and vulnerable. And they said that these lyrics are a far cry from the other songs that are driven by a sense of youthful narcissism. So I don't know if that's like referring, although yeah, no, they are saying most of Good Charlotte's new songs. I don't know. I feel like they had largely gotten away from that on this album, but not entirely. And again, I think people have different interpretations.
Yeah, I'd agree.
User Stephanie's 1991 on Hit Parade said it's just a beautiful and deep song. I think that's another like user-generated review site. Billboard gave the album 3.5 stars and says that Standing Ovation has a rootsy kind of shimmer,
Is it 3.5 out of 5? I hope.
I think so. Yeah. Based on the review, it was not like this is a 3.5 out of 10. Like it sounded like a 3.5 out of 5 kind of review.
Mm-hmm. Well, the rootsy actually makes sense because when I hear rootsy, I hear like I hear back porch, like back you and your brother Benji and Joel on a patio together, just in the summertime. Just one's riffing on some chords, the other one's playing a fun little lead, and just very like back to the roots of making a song together. Yeah.
And that's, I think, what they kind of wanted to do with this album was, in a lot of ways, go back to their roots.
Mm-hmm. Especially after like the way that the music like writing goes, with all like traveling and different writers and different studios and moving. It's like you start to, from what I've heard and talked to with some people who are in the industry, they said it's really hard to kind of come back and just get into a jam space with your friends, like your band. You kind of have to constantly keep going because, the label doesn't want to wait for a year for you to come out with a record after the last one's been out for 2 years already.
Right.
So I can hear that they got some time to just go back home almost, and just.
Well, which they quite literally did. They were going to release this record in 2009, and they basically scrapped it and redid it with Don Gilmore and came out in fall 2010.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So, yeah. It is interesting because they've talked about how like some of the songs may have been started in the initial round of recording with Howard Benson, but I feel like this is a song that was written later on. If we take your interpretation of what this song is, which again, it could also be written about that, beyond what Benji had said about it being about Joel's kids. If we take your interpretation of what this song is about, definitely it feels like something that came like in the second portion of the recording process.
And it could have also, and we've had this, like our one song Chances, Ryan sat on for 10 years.
Wow.
And it took different, it constantly evolved into different meanings and different, or expansions of those previous meanings. So this very well could have started off a while ago, and then it transformed into that. Because
I love that. Yeah. Let's read some fan reviews from Amazon. First, we have a couple. Joseph Landez gave the song a 4 out of 5 and said it's a bit of a country sounding take on their music.
Yes, that blues riff.
Yep. I could hear like a country band kind of doing this. Yeah, for sure. And that this could be a nice break in the action for them at a live show.
Oh, everything we've been saying.
Right. JDog3377 thinks this is the best GC album and that their music has nicely progressed from the first album. But this person likes that there are several excellent deeper songs with lots of strong emotional feel, including this one. It's one of their faves because of the strong emotional feel. It's definitely emotional, but I feel like that emotion goes beyond the lyrics, and it's largely, as you were saying, like the instrumentation and the arrangement of the song.
Right. And like one of the reviews earlier, this is away from like their like youthful narcissism, kind of like that angsty FU, very much of, we've grown up a bit and we've seen the world differently, and now we feel this way. That's one of the reasons why Paramore, they're not singing Misery Business anymore.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm grown up.
Well, they did, I feel like Paramore, because weren't they doing for Misery Business, like, they would have like a kid, like a teen, come up and sing it with them, and that was their way of like reclaiming it before they eventually like retired the song. Weren't they doing that? I think they were having like a kid come up and sing it with them usually, or a fan.
Yeah, that was the fan song. Like, hey, we're gonna invite someone up here and sing, because it's also a safe song because almost everyone probably knows the lyrics if you're a Paramore fan like that. So
Modern Baseball had, I don't remember which song, but they had one song where they use the word bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing them and they were like, hey, there's a word in this song that we don't want to use anymore. So we're going to say fish. And it sounded kind of funny, but I was like, what? Respect that.
Yeah, there's a lot of bands that I've been friends with a lot of bands for like a long time who are still active, and their commentary before certain songs would include like slut shaming and things like that because it was cool. But now it's like, oh wait, this is really bad to say that. We're not going to say this anymore.
Yeah, and it's even, I think about not Good Charlotte so much, but like other pop punk bands I, saw when I was in middle school and high school would say that the crowd looked sexy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it was like mostly 12 to 16-year-old girls in that crowd, and you are men that are like 25. Like,
most of them are probably in trouble now too. So
yeah, definitely some of them are.
Yeah. But it's great that so many bands are taking that step to educate themselves and not using certain lyrics in their songs, or not using them live anymore.
Yeah.
If they were in there, and then also monitoring their between song banter. I've been on stage obviously, and I know what it's like to kind of get caught up just rambling.
Sure.
And you say things you might not mean because maybe it's an everyday language, or you're trying to make a joke but you think it'd be funny but it's really not.
But even if you're like the first band on a local show, you are a role model, a public figure, right?
Absolutely.
Even if it's for those 20 minutes you're up there, and even if it's only 15 kids in the crowd, like, you are a public figure to those 15 kids in the crowd for those 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And if you're not going to hold yourself accountable, how can you hold anybody else accountable?
Yeah. It doesn't mean like you can't be a little kooky or whatever, but it's, I feel like bands just need to know that everything can and likely will be like put on video, put on Twitter, put on TikTok, YouTube, and
right.
like,
yeah. And like just the awareness, with what these words mean now.
Yeah.
Not that they didn't mean anything different before, but we ignored those meanings because we thought it was funny or edgy.
Right. We thought it was cool when, All Time Low talked about like wanting to, whatever.
I'm sure Jack said something about making love to the entire crowd.
Yeah, making love and like, oh, I want to kiss your mom. And, they would say things like that. And, I'm kind of like, how does that hold up,
Right, exactly. And it doesn't. So
no, it doesn't.
It's good. And like a lot of bands are moving on from like the Good Charlotte, I don't think ever did that. I've seen them live a couple of times. They're very, very respectful, very, very mature and educated with what they say and how it can come across and their role in the industry music scene. But even kind of like the angsty FU songs that they wrote on like their first records, it's like, hey, we don't need to be that way anymore because we're not 18 and miserable. We're 29, 30, 35 with a
they're
career
like
and happy.
40, 41 I think the twins are now. That
would make sense. So it's like we got kids and family. And like, do I want my kids and my my partner to come to the show? And
they've talked about, like, Joel will talk about how like having a daughter has made him think about Riot Girl very differently.
That makes sense.
And I feel like Riot Girl, I think it's a positive song. I don't think it's like I don't think it's like a bad song, but I could definitely see how you might feel differently about, a song you wrote when you were like in your early 20s, not married, how you might feel differently about just like the way you speak about women, and the women you were interested in dating.
Right, exactly.
Now that you are 30s, 40s and have children.
Right. And like, I'm like reading the lyrics right now because I, it was like, but like, you don't want someone to call your daughter a hot girl hood rat.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's a Good Charlotte version of Blink-182 Josie, kind of, right? Like,
Yeah.
I kind of think it's a song about not one specific girl, just like, oh, this is like my dream girl, kind of, But right, you don't want your daughter to say that, but that probably wasn't even a thing they were thinking about, And I feel like that comes out in this song is like, as much as like I'm sure they always wanted, in some ways they wanted family, whatever way that family would form for them. You never know what that's going to look like. You don't know when you're 22 or 23 and writing The Young and the Hopeless that, oh, you're going to marry this person and this is their name and you're going to have 2 kids and, these are their names and their ages. Like, you don't know that.
Right. Probably didn't want it back then either.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. So, but that's good now that I guess so many things are coming to light and everyone's getting educated.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Because then bands can be more, I think and people who have like any influence at all or just anything you do, it's more, what's what I'm looking for. I'm just going to, okay, this is lazy, but like respectful from the start. Like even young bands who are 17, 18 years old that I've come in contact with, their knowledge of social justice and advocacy and what these
there's
words
less
mean.
Tolerance for like, oh, he's like 18 and, did something really fucking stupid. Like, there's even, when I was 19, 20 and interviewing band guys who were 18, 19, 20, in 2010, 2011, shit was pulled that absolutely would not be accepted now, that people would know better, that 18-year-olds just starting bands would know better than to do now.
Right, exactly. And that's the maturation of like society.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing, frankly. I think it's a very good thing.
Well, exactly. Like if Netflix is gonna release stuff to everybody of like sexual nature or aggressive language and things like that for anyone, or cell phones are going to become common for a 6-year-old to have, and they're really not blocked from, they're exposed to all of this stuff, then okay, well, the youth is going to mature a lot quicker, so then we have to educate a lot sooner. Like this, like I'm like I said, being a therapist, I have parents, and some parents are having the talk with their children as young as 5-6 years old.
Wow.
Because it's not uncommon for them to go into like 2nd grade and kids are talking about it because they've got a cell phone that has access to pornography.
Yeah.
And very, malleable age, so it's like, you have to, so now that's like, okay, the youth is maturing quicker. We can't do anything about it because of the world we created. Well, let's educate. Yeah, a lot sooner and with more up-to-date, accurate information and studies.
And I think educating, like, definitely also, it removes mystery and mystique, I think, especially if we talk about, like, alcohol and drugs. Like, the people that I went to college with that went the craziest freshman year in terms of, like, partying were the ones whose parents were super strict about it. And, versus, like, my parents, I never wanted to drink because, and my siblings, were different. They made different choices than me, but like my parents put no mystery around alcohol. So there was never that like intriguing, like mystery kind of thing for me. It didn't like feel rebellious. It didn't feel exciting. I was like, okay, like mom drinks wine at dinner, dad drinks beer at dinner. Like, okay.
Right. Yeah. It's the same thing with my family. My family really didn't drink, but they're the same way. They're just like, look, if you're going to do it, this is how you be safe. Yeah. Here's what you need to know that it does to your body. And this is how it's going to make you feel. And hopefully you take that education and make good choices. Yeah. But, so, good tangent.
I know, what a tangent.
Good tangent.
Mark, how has Standing Ovation held up for you over time?
It still holds up. I'm 29 years old, and I still love it.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I get a lot more of it now, also being 29. Fuck, I'm 29.
Yeah, right. Damn.
Right. But I feel like I get a lot more of it now, like the feelings of like, not that I hadn't done anything interesting when I was 19, but like I have done many more interesting things in the past 10 years, that I'm able to like look back and reflect on, like, oh, look how far I've come, kind of thing.
Right. And for me too, being like older in songwriting, it's like I'm starting to recognize like, and I guess this just comes with age, but like totally. the later records of bands are hitting me more with the writing and the lyricism. Like this, like just the tangent off with the Wonder Years, like I've been listening to their entire discography as we're like thinking about the next record now since pandemic, what else we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to realize that like No Closer to Heaven is probably my favorite record by them.
I need to go back. I will be honest. So like Suburbia is the record that got me into the Wonder Years, and I've had that on repeat as I've been driving to and from Philadelphia, you know, viewing apartments and everything. I only listen to the Wonder Years now. That's, you know, the Wonder Years 24/7. That's it. I'm moving to Philadelphia. I'm not going to listen to any other band ever. Sorry. I love Suburbia. I love The Greatest Generation. I didn't love No Closer to Heaven when it came out. And I, you know, going back, when I have gone back to No Closer to Heaven, I like it more. But I haven't really gone back to the latest record.
Sister Cities?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to give that one another chance too.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I've seen them live at least once, touring off every record, if not several times. And like every time I've seen them live, I've been like, oh, fuck, like everything sounds so good. Like whatever record they're touring off of, I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the same thing with, I think back to Sister Cities, but yeah, like just like even with Good Charlotte, like the later records are, and again, maybe it's just because of age. I'm a little older. Like you and me both said, like we've experienced different things. We don't hold on to the same angst that we did when we were in our late teens, maybe early 20s even. And especially coming from me, like with the songwriting, like I can't imagine writing a song that would have come out on a band's like first or second record anymore.
Right.
Because it just doesn't feel genuine, right? And
like the forced youthful naivety.
Yeah, like, and like that's one of the great thing about Ryan and Cody is they definitely do not want to ever do something like that. We don't want to just be like, yo, let's take a book out of like Blink's Enemy of the State record and rip something like that off. It's like, well, why are we going to talk about partying in college when we are almost 10 years removed from college?
Right.
Like it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel genuine. Like it could be a fun song just to write just for band practice goofs, but like I'm not going to put that on a record.
Right. It's like you should write about, I mean, and it's not that you can't write about what college was like.
Right. If it really is meaningful to you at that moment.
But I also feel like, you know, and you and I being the same age, I feel like how I might write about or talk about college now is different from how I would have written about college when I was 17 and getting ready to go away to college.
Yeah,
you know,
like when I was 17, if I was writing about going away to college, I would have
written Going Away to College by Blink-182.
Exactly. I would have just ripped that off. But Can't Wait to Party and F the World and I'm Taking on the World, and now I'd be like, wow, I was a little shit. I thought I knew everything at 21.
Oh yeah.
So, but I think so for like this song, I think it's resonated more now when I listen to it than when I first heard it because I'm in that mental space. Yeah. You know, in my life. So, and I think that really, you know, so it holds up better now than it did back then. Yeah.
I love that. Just a few more questions before we head out. What has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
I would think back then they were much more important to me in songwriting because I was just getting into pop punk. So they were one of the few bands that, again, because I was like, well, who's in the mainstream? Because that's all I know. They were part of it. So Blink, Sum 41, Good Charlotte, Simple Plan, and now they might not mean as much to like go back and listen to all the time. But what they mean more to me, like with their like taking what they're doing, writing and like critically looking at it and saying, oh, okay.
Right. You can like appreciate it from an artistic perspective.
Right. It's like almost like ignore like Lifestyle's Rich and Famous and ignore like the lyrics and like the angsty, but or like even like songs like Standing Ovation, like even if you just take the lyrics out for a second, it's like, okay, what are they doing? And so that means like so much more now, because like we want to do that. We want to be a professional band. We like the more we like the pop punk bands like Simple Plan and Blink, Neck Deep, even as far as the modern day stuff, State Champs. We don't want to rip off like their sound by any means, but we love like the stripped back simplistic songwriting.
I feel like I don't know. I'm very torn on Neck Deep, and I've been very like 50-50 on their live shows, to be perfectly honest. How is the new record? Like, do I, as someone who's just like incredibly ambivalent on Neck Deep, like, do I owe it to myself to go check out their latest record? Because they did put out a record this year, right? Yeah,
they did. They actually put out the record the same day we released our first single, Happy.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was fun because their bass player Seb mixed and mastered our record. So
love that. Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to be like, happy release day, dude. And then, but yeah, I would check it out.
Okay.
For sure, because it's at least for like a critical analysis of like.
Sure. Yeah.
But if you're expecting like Life's Not Out to Get You songs, or you're expecting Peace and a Panic songs, like you're not going to get it.
Right.
Definitely more mature for sure. And then even like following the band members and like seeing like when they talk about the songs, like where they were mentally, like, I can like see that.
Okay.
Yeah. It was almost like, all right, we've overcome the sophomore slump.
Yeah.
And now we get to do what we want to do for this third record and take a chance.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely not a disappointment. My favorite song is a song called Pushing Daisies. It's the last song on the record. And that has the same kind of country bluesy vibe that Standing Ovation has.
Okay. All right. I'm intrigued. Okay.
Yeah. And like songs like I Revolve Around You, especially if you watch the music video with it.
Okay.
They actually did a whole animation music video. Ooh. And it's like two characters kind of like flying through space and stuff like that. And it's very what's the cartoon? I'm blanking on the cartoon it reminds me of, but it's not like super animated like you'd see like a SpongeBob SquarePants or something, or like Family Guy. It's very like kind of clippy video.
Like a BoJack kind of thing?
Yes. I would say if I had to relate it to any sort of animation, it would be closest to BoJack.
Okay.
And it's a very cool, when you listen to the music and you watch the video, it's a very nice like love story.
Okay.
So
I'll check that out.
Yeah, give it at least a once through.
Yeah. Any last words about Standing Ovation, about Good Charlotte, about Goalkeeper, or about yourself?
Well, Standing Ovation, take a critical look at it, songwriters listening, and take a note out of their book and see how they can incorporate different styles of music to make a pop punk song very unique. Yeah. But in us, I mean, we released Life in Slow Motion on the 25th of September, so go stream it and check it out. If for those who want to know, Will Pugh from Cartel engineered it, and Kevin Mahoney from Hit the Lights was the producer, and Seb from Neck Deep mixed and mastered it. So
got a good little team.
Yeah, it was incredible to learn from them, especially like Will. Because we've already worked with Kevin, so like we got to pick his brain a whole bunch already. But getting Will's perspective on everything, especially like the industry, and being what like Cartel went through.
They definitely went through some shit.
Yeah, they did, and he was very open about all of it. And to this day, we still text all the time, and
love that.
We send him lame ass like memes.
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, go check that out and wear a mask, please. Stay safe. And I don't know if we get political, but go vote.
Yeah, we get political in the sense that I put in my intros to vote, and I think I've put anti-Trump sentiments. You know,
Yeah.
I think, you know, I think I said in like the intro that went up today that I was like, look, if you're a good Charlotte fan, you're probably like a compassionate and caring person, and like, you know, that doesn't really vibe with Trump for many reasons.
Right. So yeah, get out there and vote. We need change. We need positive change. Stream the record, and yeah, go listen to Cardiology, because I don't think that record gets enough love that it should.
It really doesn't. Okay, Mark, so before we head out, so I do a Generation GC and Friends Spotify playlist. So I'm going to include Standing Ovation. So which Goalkeeper song would you like to put on there?
You can put on Just Say It.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be my pick, but I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, Just Say It.
And what would be your recommendation, just anything you've been digging lately?
Ooh, let me get my Spotify out, because so I'm very seasonal with my music.
Okay.
So some bands hit me harder in the fall.
Sure.
And less in like the spring. Like I can't really listen to the Wonder Years in the springtime. It's weird.
Yeah. Okay.
But same like Blink-182, I can really only listen to like in the summer. I'm just like, I'm weird. I'm out with like my beers too. Like I'm not gonna drink certain beers during certain times of the year. It just doesn't taste the same. But I have really been on a Misser kick.
Okay.
So definitely check out Misser. Great band. Rest in peace, Tim Landers.
I know, that's so sad.
I heard they're doing a documentary on
really?
On him. I saw someone post in one of the Facebook pop punk groups that they're assisting on a documentary.
A defend pop punk group?
Something like that. Defend pop punk kids, one of those.
I have been in the defend pop punk group at 2 separate points in my life and left it a couple of years ago, and you know, I've been okay ever since, but I always wonder, I'm like, oh, what's going down in there lately?
Nothing. It's just memes.
Yeah. Well, that's probably better.
The one thing that was being posted that I am very happy stopped very quickly were people were posting selfies, and they were asking people to rate them with like, would you fuck me, marry me, or kill me? And so like, especially like very exploitative images of self and things like that.
Well, and like there's probably like some 17-year-old kids in there, as well as a bunch of like creepy older guys too, I would imagine.
Well, and some of the language was creepy. It's like, oh well, I definitely would marry or kill you, and you know what I'd like to do to you, just DM me, and like shit like that. I'm like, why are we inviting this toxicity?
Yeah.
Like I thought this was supposed to be about music. Like I'm all down for like a meme here and there, but this is
pop punk is very memeable.
Right, but this isn't a meme. This is very creepy and inviting dangerous situations to come up. But yeah, definitely Misser.
Okay.
The Wonder Years, Now Closer to Heaven, for sure. And then a good Charlotte song that I've been bumping, which I mentioned earlier, but Life Lessons. Or not Life Lessons, Life Changes, I'm sorry.
Life Changes, yeah.
Especially with that like lo-fi guitar, like I said, and the explosiveness. It's just, I love it. Love it.
Amazing. Mark, thank you so much. Where can people keep up with you and Goalkeeper on the internet?
Everywhere that you can imagine. So the handles are all the same, just at Goalkeeper Band.
Perfect.
That's it. For Instagram, Twitter, and all that, Facebook, and
amazing.
You have to take, and like I said, we're on Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer. I know a lot of people have been using that lately.
Okay.
So yeah, good. And like I said, go check out the new record, and if you like it, share it, and let's become friends.
Amazing. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. My name is Molly Hudelson. I've been your host. Last week, we talked about The River from Good Morning Revival. In a few days, we'll have a bonus episode covering something Good Charlotte related that's not a studio album track. And then next week, we'll be back with a song from Youth Authority. You can follow Generation GC at Generation GC Pod, P-O-D, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also follow me, Molly, at M. Hudelson, MHUDELSON on Twitter and Instagram. Please make sure to subscribe to Generation GC on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen, so that you'll be the first to see the new episodes when they drop. And please make sure to rate it, review, and share it with a friend. Thank you all for tuning in.